I know lots of you out there seem to easily fall for the bullshit narratives and propaganda that the media and the politicians and the central planners, control freaks, and sociopaths in this country put forth. But, you know, it really is time that you start thinking for yourself, using logic, reason, and actual evidence rather than rhetoric to decipher and determine the reality that surrounds you. I mean, this multi-decade long, in the modern era anyways, facade of pretending that Canada is such a free country, blah, 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 blah. That narrative it's being shown for what it is. Complete propaganda, bullshit, and lies. I mean, you know, I'm not even going to start into the whole how the country of Canada come to exist, or all of the, you know, the internment camps, you know, how the First Nation peoples were treated, massive oppressions, beliefs in central planning and mysticism, you know, the residential schools. Just, I mean, yeah, well, I'm not even going to cover that stuff. I'm just going to stick to the topic at hand, which is, and this is a Globe and Mail editorial. Headline: most of Canada's prisoners have never been convicted of anything. Why are they in jail? On any given day in Canada, there are more innocent people in prison than guilty ones. By innocent people, we mean those who have been accused of a crime and are being held in remand awaiting a bail hearing on a trial. Across the country, 55%, which is a majority, of prisoners in provincial and territorial jails are not behind bars because of a conviction. It wasn't always that way. In 2001, the majority of Canada's prisoners had been tried and convicted and were serving a sentence. But steady declines in the crime rate and in the number of convicted offenders in prison, coupled with an even tighter bottleneck in bail courts, has put the country in this absurd situation. This isn't exactly news, by the way. In 2013, the John Howard Society of Ontario reported that the number of accused held on remand doubled from 2001 to 2010 and called for reforms to the bail system. The Minister of Justice of the day, Peter MacKay, said it was something that we intend to look into. Unfortunately, he made the comment just before heading into a meeting with victims' rights advocates, which said everything. Yeah, he's a fucking politician. Oh my God! If the whole basis, the whole platform of your occupation says that you have to be a lying, sniveling, fucking thief, propagandist, bullshitter, control freak, sociopath. Yeah. The Harper government has made victims' rights the cornerstone of its legal outlook. Reforming the conditions under which people charged with crimes are allowed to remain in society is not something the Conservatives has shown much interest in pursuing. But it's not just the Conservatives. I'm very glad that the editorial board at the Globe will point that out. Showing a little bit of courage. Good for you. Because this whole bullshit narrative that I've seen from the leftist fucking media, trying to paint just the Conservatives as the oppressors, well, yeah. I mean, it's about time you start fucking acknowledging that the left is every bit, if not worse, than the Conservatives on many aspects, right? Death by 1,000 cuts or one slice off your head. Which one's more painful, right? Slicing off your head sounds bad, which is what a conservative would do, right? And it does sound bad, and it would not be a good ending either way. But it's quick and relatively fucking painless. Whereas death by 1,000 cuts, which is the liberal fucking narrative, the way they want to rule over you, that's a very, very long, painful. It's not just physical pain, but mental fucking anguish that goes along with it. So, no federal or provincial politician of any stripe with an instinct for self-preservation would take on the cause of the accused person in this country. They would risk being branded as soft on crime, with Prime Minister Stephen Harper likely leading the chorus. We are thus at a stalemate. The people elected to lead are ignoring a crisis that needs immediate attention, but the only response from governments to date has been the construction of larger remand centers in Toronto and Edmonton to hold the growing hordes of legally innocent people trapped in the system. The politicians run for cover while the crisis feeds on itself. Now this is just my subjective opinion on why this is even being brought forward now, but I believe it's probably fairly accurate. Is most of these people, whether it's in the media or government, recognize that once the boomers are all are retired and they're going to need all these successive generations to take up these roles and positions, what it is not that they give a flying fuck. The editorial board at the Globe and Mail or any politician, they don't give a fuck about the fact that people are screwed over constantly by the government, right? They don't. Sorry, that's just reality. Look in your top 10 type of people that are psychopaths, and you'll realize the people in media, they meet that criteria. So they don't. But what it is, they recognize that once all the older fucks are retired, and all the younger generations are penalized and criminalized, and won't even be able to assume these positions. Well, we need to do something about that now, so that we have some fucking slaves to take over in these positions, and to assume the responsibility of care for the older fucks when they're retired and on their own. Or dependents, once again, like they were as a child. That's the beautiful thing about human existence. You start out as a dependent, and you end as a dependent. So that time in between, how you cover that time in between, is super important. I hope most Canadians are starting to recognize that. Obviously, the media fucks are. They're not going to tell you that honestly, principally, being, straightforward with you. They'll put out these kind of bullshit articles to try to, twist, distort that narrative. But at least the topic's being covered, and I can set things straight from the real perspective, from an objective perspective. On the statistically insignificant occasion that a person gets released on bail and then commits a heinous crime, the public outcry is enormous. The only reason why that happens is the public outcry. I mean, that right there, damn well is complete fucking bullshit, because when have you ever seen the real public outcry? People lying in the streets. You don't see it, do you? You don't. No, the media puts forth, they put out the bait articles, the clickbait articles, the propaganda, and then they try to reel the idiots in to propagate their message. So it's not the people, it's the central planners, control freaks, and the opinion makers that they're really talking about themselves. The bail system is accused of being a revolving door for criminals. Opportunistic politicians stir the pot with calls for tougher bail rules. These guys think they're being smart, but you're not. You're not even as smart as you pretend. You're a Globe editorial board. I know you fucks. Yeah, whatever. Stung by the criticisms, the courts and cops become overcautious. The police release fewer suspects charged with minor offenses, even though it is in their power to let someone go with a summons to appear in court. Instead, they detain them and cycle them into the justice system. It keeps all these fucking idiots with the job. Think about it. Anyone whose occupation or job relies on, like, if you're a correctional facility officer, security, cop, judge, prosecutor, their livelihood remains in keeping this system going. Like, don't you understand that, Canada? Can you not fucking wrap your head around the fact that the reason why they do this stuff is because if reality was allowed to play out, well, a large swath of the public sector employees would have to go, because there's absolutely no need for them, because crime rates, as we know, real genuine crime rates, especially, that actually have real victims, violent crimes, they're lower than they've been in almost 50 years. So they got to propagate this bullshit and these narratives to keep the public sector fucks in jobs, in positions. I mean, how corrupt and how sick, how sadistic is that? The power to summon, to go with the summons to appear. Yeah. Instead, they detain them and cycle them into the justice system, where their first stop is in an overburdened bail court. There, judges are likely to set punitive conditions and demand a surety, which is money, bribes, someone who will vouch for the accused person, make sure they meet his or her conditions, and agree to forfeit a set amount of money should the person fail to report to court. In most cases, the accused are minor offenders, drug users, people with mental health issues accused of nonviolent crimes. First-time offenders, 20 years ago, they would have automatically gotten bail. Today, low-risk individuals charged with minor offenses have their bail matters put over numerous times on account of the increasing reliance on sureties as a condition of release, along with other delays, says the John Howard. It's about maintaining the bureaucracy and bullshit, like I just fucking said. But these fucks, you see how they... Do you see how that works? Do you see how they try to... None of them actually wants to deal with the core of the issue. They just want to play around the fringes. Sick fucking idiots they are. Sick. Stupid, ignorant, incapacitated mentally. I don't know. I can't... There's just no excuse for them. The result? Less people are being released on bail less quickly and with more conditions during a time of historically low and still declining crime rates. So... societies have gotten so well and so advanced and well, usually through technologies, education. So, like I said, super low crime rates at this point, but the control freaks and sociopaths to maintain and keep their system, bureaucracy going, have to create an atmosphere of hatred, fear, division, and criminality to keep all their buddies and their serfs in positions of authority and keeping a paycheck to keep them happy, because they know that the backlash, if they don't, will come from the sociopaths that are in these positions. The normal people aren't going to be outraged. It'll be the public servants, the order followers, right? That's who they're really trying to protect. And keeping somebody behind bars is expensive. Economist Don Drummond, in his 2012 report on the reform of Ontario's public service, said it costs $183 a day to hold an accused person in remand, compared to $5 a day on a supervised release. Pilot programs have shown that 9 out of 10 people in supervised release show up for the court dates. Of course they do. Of course they do. Because if you don't show up for your court date, which is... I mean, unless you're going to leave the country and fuck off for good. I mean, what good would it do you not to show up for your court date if you've been charged? I mean... You know it's only going to cause the situation to be worse. You're going to have more charges against you, and it's only going to make matters worse. Even criminals, even the lowly fucking lowest of the low criminals recognize that, and it's a self-preservation mechanism. Not that they want to be obedient serfs or slaves to the... They just will do it. They'll show up because they don't want to make their fucking lives any harder, especially if you've been penalized or punished for smoking a plant. Ah, Jesus. Jesus. Unnecessary remand deprives the legally innocent of the ability to work and support their families or continue their education. And those who do get bail are often saddled with exceedingly difficult and even counterproductive conditions, which set people up to fail. The John Howard Society of Ontario found that nearly 81% of accused people with an alcohol problem had a bail condition to not consume alcohol. The percentage of drug addicts under a bail order to abstain from drugs was even higher. Given what we know about addiction, ordering sick people to stop being sick as a condition of release seems unlikely to succeed. Well, fucking duh. But meanwhile, if you get your drugs legally through prescriptions from your doctor, well, there's no, obviously, that when the inevitable breach occurs, back to court they go. It is estimated that 1 in 5 court cases today are for breaches of bail condition. So it's, like I said, do I really have to? I'm going to anyways, yeah, because it's only a few more 3 more paragraphs. Continuously cycling individuals through the courts makes it highly improbable that the individual will be able to participate in a structured rehabilitation program and treat the underlying cause of their substance use and accordingly remove herself from the cycle of arrest, release, breached, and rearrest, the report said. The system is broken. There are civil servants, judges, lawyers, prisoners, advocates, and others who are trying to fix it. They have studied the issue and made excellent recommendations in several reports, but without political will, their efforts will go nowhere. Yeah, you're not going to convince that. That's just, yeah. Is there a politician in Canada with the courage to take up the cause? Someone who won't pander to fears whipped up by the tough-on-crime crowd, but will instead build a better system based on evidence, enlightened self-interest, and a genuine respect for the right to liberty? Or will we continue to be a country where 2 out of 3 people behind bars haven't been convicted of anything? Well, it's always going to, as long as the religion of statism is practiced, propagated, pronounced, and put forth as the basis for human coexistence in this country, yes, it's always going to continue to be that way, and it's actually probably going to get worse. You're actually, all this big long article, I mean, obviously it's not the worst thing ever. There's some but you're still trying to frame that narrative in a way that you're not actually helping people. You're just trying to see if you could put forth a better sales tactic, a better sales pitch. Be honest with the fucking people, and you have no idea how much better off society will be if you would just be honest with them completely. Stop fucking playing around the fringes, right? Stop playing or propagating the religion or the language of statism and speak honestly. Speak from your heart. Use empathy, compassion, logic, reasoning, common sense. Stop playing these fucking stupid games. I know it's going to take a lot to unwind that stupid indoctrinated bullshit that you've been taught and the way you've been taught to speak because you're good little status. But that's really the only way, and that's what I do. So that's why I'm covering this article and putting my, not a spin, but my observation and my objective observation and a reflection of that. That's why that's what I'm doing. Is I'm not trying to paint any kind of picture. I'm just trying to tell people honestly, and that's the reality. That's the way it is. You need to do something to fix things. The religion of statism, blind conformity, mysticism, central planning, coercion, force, government is why all of this happens. Get rid of all that stuff, then things will get much better. Absent that, you're just twinkering around the edges. You're just tweaking things. You're not actually affecting real change. Someday you'll come to realize this. Hopefully sooner rather than later. For the sake of all of Canada. For the sake of the whole world. It's Canadian Libertarian. And I love liberty.